Ciao, Facebook friends! We are live from Rome. Thank you for watching this live streaming event of this virtual walking tour of Testaccio, one of the neighborhoods of Rome. Welcome to all the people who are watching live, and of course those who are watching the recorded version of this video. And especially I want to say hi to our high school students watching from all over the United States. This is I'm Johnny from Temple University, Rome. Temple University, Rome is part of the big family Temple University in Philadelphia. In Rome, we offer, of course, a semester, like a study abroad, a semester for undergrad or an academic year. We also offer the Temple Rome entry year program, which is for freshmen, the first year students that want to start their academic career in Rome for the first year, that they want to move back to Philadelphia from the second year and finish and graduate in Philadelphia. We also offer the adult study abroad program. So many things, but you can check our website, rome.temple.edu, for more information. Also, at the end of this live, we're going to give you more information. Thank you, fantastic spring 2021 students of my work study students here. We have a Carlos. He's going to check the chat and monitor the audio. We have a Chris camera 2, Liam camera 3. Thank you so much for helping. But now I would like to introduce Professor, architecture professor at Temple University of Rome, Andrew Kranis. Ciao, Andrew.
Ciao,
Like
Johnny.
this.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here again with you. We just want to say to everybody watching right now, please, in the chat box, you can put your name, where you're from. That will be great to know. But also, anytime during the live session, if you have questions, go for it. Type it. We're going to read your questions live, okay?
Thank you,
Andrew,
Johnny.
I'm going to walk with you.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Hello to Temple and hello, friends of Temple. My name is Andrew Kranis, and I'm an architect and a professor of architecture, and I work here in Rome. I've been teaching here for over 10 years, and I'm going to take you on a tour of my very favorite neighborhood of Rome. Before we go, though, I've got a nice 2-meter perimeter around me, so here's my face. As we go on, I'll be introducing you to the ways in which this neighborhood represents some of the best of this city, and especially because it combines a great deal of ancient Roman history with an exciting contemporary life. And for the reasons that I will be explaining along the way, I'm also taking you around the neighborhood that I call home. So let's begin with where we are in the city. We are just to the south of the monuments that you might know, the Colosseum, the Pantheon, and so on. But we are also within the bounds of the historic center. So in other words, parts of the city that were built even during the Roman imperial period and during the Republic. So what I want to say about where we're beginning from now is that it is an edge condition. We are basically standing at the gate, which is off here to my right, known as St. Paul's Gate. And this gate is connected to an enormous wall known as the Aurelian Wall, which was the military fortification built in 271 AD in order to protect the capital city from invaders. And so what we have here behind the wall is a neighborhood that was at one time Rome's emporium, which is to say where all of its goods, and especially its food, was imported into before it was distributed to the Roman citizens. So it's an extremely important district of the city, but it was not a residential district. For most of its history, in fact, it was a warehouse area. And we'll see some of the remains of that condition amongst other interesting, more modern developments that tell us a story about how this place has grown up over about 2,000 years. So before we move on, let me introduce you to the principal monuments that mark the kind of boundary to the neighborhood. The first one, St. Paul's Gate, Porta San Paolo. The actual architecture of this structure dates to about the 4th century, and it was literally a gate of entry for anyone coming up the road from Via Ostiense, down in the other direction. This was an import channel. It was the road that ran alongside the Tiber River, and they were able to bring goods overland through this gate, which formed as a kind of customs checkpoint. And then they would move it off to the left and bring it to the warehouses. Also in our immediate vicinity here is an extraordinary monument that is actually an earlier relic of ancient Roman antiquity. It's known as the Pyramid of Gaius Cestius, and it's one of the most spectacular monuments in the city. It actually dates from 18 BC, so it comes before even the ancient Roman wall, and it's a tomb. It's actually the tomb of a man known as Gaius Cestius. We don't know much about him, but his name's inscribed on there. And that tomb was taking its form from Egyptian pyramids, because the Romans had conquered the Egyptians during the 1st century before the Common Era. So this pyramid was sitting at the fringes of the city as a tomb, as were many burial monuments along the road that leads out of the city. And along comes Aurelian in 271 and decides to incorporate this 100 feet of masonry construction in the fortification wall. So as we pass it, we are going to see how the wall just runs right into it. Let's start our tour.
Ciao to pre-college programs. Maureen Sirocco connected with us, Associate Director for pre-college, summer and pre-college programs at Temple University Rome. We have a lot of people, Andrew, saying hi from all over the world, Philadelphia, from Brazil, some alumni, Temple University Rome.
So this is the Aurelian Wall. And this wall was built, as I say, as a fortification to keep invaders out. And what we're standing at here is quite literally the boundary between the periphery of the city and the interior of the historic center. And as you see, it runs right into the edge of this great marble pyramid from the 1st century before the Common Era. So as we pass this point, we are both within the historic center of Rome and also within the neighborhood of Testaccio. Let's have a closer look.
What?
Testaccio is mostly a residential neighborhood, but there are a couple of important monuments and institutions it's worth noting. And just a little way down this block, we're going to take a peek at something rather extraordinary that is right in our midst. This is the wall of the non-Catholic cemetery, which is to say, mostly for people who came from outside of Rome to live their lives here, and because of their passion for this city, chose to be buried here. And through this window, and perhaps it's possible to focus a camera there, we're going to see 2 tombstones, the headstones of 2 English people who spent their lives in this city in the early 19th century. And one of them is called John Severn. He's a painter, and the other is the very famous romantic poet John Keats. John Keats, who made the Ode a popular form of poetry in the 19th century and is perhaps one of the best read poets in the English language. He died here of tuberculosis at age 27, and he and Severn, who were companions at that time, have their remains here at the non-Catholic cemetery. This is just one of a number of extraordinary monuments that are right inside the park-like space of the non-Catholic cemetery that's right here at the fringe of the Testaccio neighborhood. Let's move along and start heading into the reason why Testaccio is Testaccio today.
We are live from Rome right now.
If you take a gaze, sorry, I hear Johnny was saying something to our audience.
I'm just saying, like, we're live, so
Yep.
I want to remind that everything is happening right now is live from Rome. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to mention that the post office opposite us is one of the great examples in Rome of what's known as rationalist architecture. It's an architecture that's born out of classical monumentality, but updated for modern styles in the 1930s. In other words, during the fascist period, before World War II, buildings like this were commissioned by Benito Mussolini to represent Italy and represent Rome in all of its institutional and administrative structures. And so, love it or hate it, this is Italian modernism right in our midst. You can see that there's a tram coming down the road as well as a number of buses. This neighborhood, Testaccio, is actually extremely well served by public transportation, and all of this bus traffic is headed back to where we came from, because that principal piazza there is also the location of the Metro B of the subway line, or the underground of Rome. The trees that line this road, Via Galvani, are known as London planes. They're a kind of sycamore. And one of the ways you can tell how well established a street is by how mature the plane trees are. These are older growth London planes which date from about 120 years ago. And they were planted to line this boulevard, which leads up to a rather important piece of urban infrastructure that I'll be revealing to you in just a few minutes. But you can tell by the placement of these trees that this was an important road, that in fact the Italian government, in creating what we're about to go see, was also creating a kind of monumental approach to it.
Andrew, do you live in Testaccio?
Yes, I do.
So this is your neighborhood, right?
It's my neighborhood. It's got everything I need in less than 15 minutes, which makes it qualify for the category of smart cities. We've got pharmacy, cinema, supermarket, all the basic shopping. Our physicians live in this neighborhood and work in this neighborhood. And one of the most exciting things is Testaccio Market, which is going to be a highlight of our tour today. A covered market where you can get just about everything you need for your daily eating. And the eating is excellent here in Rome.
And actually, Testaccio, we need to remind that before pandemic, it used to know also for nightlife, right? We
Yes.
had a lot of clubs and bars.
You should tell us more about that, Johnny.
Well, I mean, it's a very live neighborhood like it was before, because now we have a curfew at 10. But before, it was really like nice to go out to restaurants, to bars. There were some clubs as well. we hope this is gonna be back by the end of April.
You know, I just stopped in the market and they tell me that as of the 26th of this month, we're going to be back to zone yellow, which
Yep.
means that bars and restaurants can now seat customers on the inside.
Yep.
The market can have food service in the open piazzetta at the center. So life is going to change here for the better in the next couple of weeks.
Exactly.
And in fact, while we're walking and talking here, we could talk about how COVID has affected Italy.
Yep.
But before we do, I just want to point out that we've arrived at one of the important monumental sites of the neighborhood, and it's called Monte Testacho. Let's stop in front of this map for a quick discussion of it. So this is a depiction of an overhead view of what's called the Hill of Shards, or Monte Testacho. And what it is really is ancient Rome's very first landfill. It's an entire landform about a quarter mile in diameter, which is built out of ancient pottery shards. And these are the shards of smashed clay pots that were used for importing goods, mostly grain, olives, and wine, and so forth, to the Rome Emporium. And the reason that that hill exists is because the Romans knew that if they were to leave those containers simply lying around, they would slough off into the river, which we see over here, and interrupt the shipping trade that runs all along the ports at this edge. So this monumental hill is something we'll be passing, and as we look to our left, we will see the incredibly intricate organization of these old broken pottery shards into a kind of informal wall.
Ciao Anna from Berlin, cold Berlin.
Wait a minute, let me say hello to Anna personally. This is a friend of mine. Hello Anna, I miss you.
Gail Chase, Liam, we're with you. Okay, we got Janina. Oh my God, my daughter loves Liam. He's amazing. They're like all family of our Spring 21 students connected with us today.
Yeah. So Johnny, how's COVID been for you in Italy? Let's talk about that.
So, I mean, right now, as we all roads leads to pottery. That's Elizabeth said. COVID, of course, right now we in Lazio we're in orange, which means that we can actually go out. The stores are open, but restaurants, cafe only to go, take away. And of course, you cannot travel. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problem of the orange zone right now. Things we hope are getting better and better. Ciao, Chris from Philadelphia. Ci manca Roma. Oh, I know. I miss Philadelphia too. We're gonna get back to travel one day, right, Andrew? Like that's one of the things that we miss traveling too.
Yes.
And we really hope for the summer something's gonna get better.
I think
right?
so. I believe that that's true. And I also want to say that for those who aren't familiar with how the situation has unfolded here, Italy was really the first place in Europe where there were chronic levels of cases of COVID-19. And I have to say from my personal experience that the government and the citizens of Italy really handled it with great solidarity. I'm very pleased at the levels of consideration that people have shown. The mask wearing in public is just a part of that. But the government's coordinated efforts to stem the sort of, to flatten the curve, so to speak, really succeeded here. And I'm happy to say that I believe by summertime, this will be a much safer place to be.
Thank you, Maureen. De Stefano, for saying like Temple Rome is handling, even with restriction, we're pretty good. Handling the whole situation. We're really hope for the fall, yes, but also for the summer, because we're going to have a summer 1 and summer 2 at Temple University Rome. And here we are, Mattatoio. Andrew, what's going on here?
All right, well, if you can put aside for the moment the fact that there is a sort of a public demonstration going on, what's behind it is really a big explanation for why Testaccio is the neighborhood that it is in the 20th and 21st century. This neighborhood was built after the creation of what's behind me, which is a state-run slaughterhouse. It's no longer in use. It was decommissioned in the 1970s. But because this large piece of industrial infrastructure was located here by the Tiber, easy access when livestock was being brought into the country, and also easy places to set up for both butchering and tanning of the livestock. There was a large community born out of that. That is to say, the slaughterhouse workers. And so the rest of this neighborhood, as we'll be seeing after this, is all really existing because it was built for the workers who were behind these gates. So let's go take a look at the ex-slaughterhouse, what it is, what it's become, before we venture into the neighborhood proper. Johnny, tell us what you can tell about the demonstration that's going on
So
here.
that's what I was trying to figure. I think it's art for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Remaking
figure...
the world with art, right? Seems to be
Yeah.
the message.
Maybe.
Let's go in and see what else is going on beyond the
maybe we
gates.
can ask some of them. Does anybody speak English? No? We wanted to interview live what was going on, but...
Johnny, if you found someone to explain things to you in...
Do you speak English?
Yes.
You do. Do you want to be interviewed live?
For what?
It's a Temple University in Rome. It's in a university. We came over. Oh, you can't. Okay. What is going on right now? That's just something that we were together with Professor. We were wondering. What is?
I'm a professor of architecture, and we're doing a tour of Testaccio. I live in the neighborhood, and I don't fully understand what this demonstration is.
It's part of a workshop with Alain Luchard, who is here, who is an artist.
Okay.
And it's a master on performative arts and community space.
Okay.
And this is one step of this path we are doing around the spaces of Matatoio and near Gazometer.
Great.
And it's a demonstration to show our solidarity to the workers of art and performative arts. And they are occupying right now the Globe Theatre in the Villa Borghese.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is a way to show our solidarity to them.
Excellent.
That's it.
Nice.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Well, best of
Thank
luck,
you.
and thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that's we need to say, Andrew, right?
Yeah.
We, of course, like in the past year, with all this, the theaters, they're closed down, cinemas closed down. A lot of workers are losing their jobs. So they're like a summer demonstration this
Right.
way.
She spoke about them occupying the Globe Theatre, and
Right.
in Rome, within one of its major city parks, is a replica of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. So that's what they're talking about. It's a wooden O, to use the line from Henry V. And that's another thing you can see when you come here to Rome. So now I'm standing inside of a complex that was actually built for all manner of work related to slaughter of livestock, distribution of meat, tanning of skins, and so on. And what you'll see is that it's actually a complex of small pavilions, or I shouldn't say they're small, they're quite large. But the idea is that this is actually a response to the conditions that had been reported by someone like Upton Sinclair about the horrors of the meatpacking industry in the United States. And in fact, in 1890, when they built this, the idea was that it would be both a sanitary place, which was disease-free for the livestock, and a healthy workplace for the people who worked here. And so what we're seeing here is a set of buildings that get excellent light, are well ventilated, and above all, allow a great deal of the activity of the complex to take place outdoors. So what you can see behind me are the steel gantries, which are still in place from when they were moving the animal carcasses around here with hooks and winches. And I won't say much more about it except to say that these buildings, after they were abandoned by the city's slaughterhouse, became great opportunities for arts organizations because they're great big cavernous spaces with good light and high ceilings. And so these two were taken over by an arts organization called Matatoio, which actually means slaughterhouse in Italian. And they are among the many tenants who have slowly begun to redevelop these properties. Another important tenant in here, which is back over the other direction, is the architecture faculty of Roma Tre University, which is one of the most important state universities in Italy. Let's take a quick look down the lane here so that we understand how expansive the complex is, and then we'll exit along the river.
If you guys are connected right now, if you have any questions for us, go ahead and put in the chat. We're trying to answer your questions while we walk on this tour.
Happy to see the sun shining. We had a couple of days of cloudy skies, but by this time of April, Rome is usually a delightful, sun-filled city and heading well into the summer season. It's a little colder than usual at this point, but at least we're enjoying some clear skies, and this is a perfect time for a walk around Testaccio. To my left here is a venue called La Pelanda, which actually used to mean the skinnery, the place where they were skinning the animals. It's no longer used for that by any means. It's actually more or less of a youth education center. They have film screenings, conferences, and the like in there, and it was one of the first buildings to be rehabilitated in this large complex. But if you want to know what it's like from before the renovation, let's have a look into this unrenovated space, and you get the sense of these cavernous but very well lighted spaces with all of their cast iron kind of armature still in place. And you can imagine this as a kind of gigantic butcher shop. Nothing's been done to this one since the 1970s. It's just waiting for a good tenant to come in and transform it. But the bones of these buildings are so good. They've lasted over 100 years now. It's now 130 years, in fact, since the construction. And so our hope, anyway, in this community is that this complex just keeps growing with new tenants and new life and new community activities. We're about to enter into a portion of the old slaughterhouse known as the City of the Alternative Economy, the Città dell'Altra Economia. And it's a special commerce zone set up by the City of Rome after they closed down the slaughterhouse itself to give opportunities for businesses that fit within certain categories, mostly having to do with fair trade merchandise and organics. And so what we have here, for example, is an organic bar, which has been open all through the COVID crisis. There's a supermarket over there. There are cultural centers. And in fact, even my son's daycare was located just behind the wall over here. But the overwhelming feature here is open space. And this is a space that I would love to see come back to life this summer. It's known as the sort of stockyards of Italy, of Rome, I should say. And what you can see here, and you can even imagine when this was used for the sort of herding of the livestock, is these big open spaces with some pens still left in cast iron, some watering troughs, and an easy access from the river, because just beyond the portico over there is the Tiber River, while immediately to the other side is that hill of pottery shards. And what this sort of brings together here is the antique version of Rome's emporium for foodstuffs, and then the modern Italian version of that, which is superimposed over it. And so we have, for example, the Hill of Shards. If you come out this way just a little bit and look into that tree-covered hill there, a closer inspection will show that it's mostly simply the clay tiles, some of which have dissolved over the last 1,500 years, turned into a clay soil, and plants have taken root there. The migratory patterns of birds have left seeds there, and it's basically a forested hilltop which is controlled by the Ministry for Cultural Treasures. Why? Because by core sampling through that hill, archaeologists are able to analyze the diet of the ancient Romans going all the way back to the 2nd century before the Common Era. It's an extraordinary treasure for archaeological study, but it also is a kind of natural landmark here now that's been here for over 1,500 years. So we're going to turn ourselves back around so that we can actually exit along the Tiber River and begin to see the neighborhood and the housing that really constitute the backbone of this community.
Ah, ma sì, camminiamo troppo velocemente.
So I remember going to a flea market and a food festival over there. It was really fun.
Yes. In fact, that open space is used for food truck markets, organic farmers markets, and even rock and roll concerts in the summertime. They'll put up the big rock and roll truss there and a temporary stage. And then, unfortunately, last winter we couldn't do it because of COVID restrictions, but what we hope is that by next winter, there'll be a temporary ice skating rink in there as well. And that's where my son got to learn skating for the first time.
Ooh,
Very nice spot.
That's really nice.
Yeah. Most of the buildings, as you can see, are still to be recolonized. They're under lock and key, but we are hoping in the coming years, as the economy recovers, there'll be more reason for companies to move in here, for activist groups, performance groups, arts groups to start occupying these spaces.
Like we got a very sunny day today.
We did get lucky, even
Right?
even relative to a few hours ago. The sun's
Yes.
come out for our walk, Johnny.
Exactly.
I think
That's what I
the gods are smiling on us this afternoon.
Okay, so we're exiting like the other side, right?
That's right. This is the entrance that's normally used by the architecture students because their faculty, their studios, their labs, their model shops are all through this gate here. But by leaving on this side, we also see the proximity of the slaughterhouse to the river, because immediately in front of us is a bridge that crosses over the Tiber and takes us to the Trastevere neighborhood,
Oh.
another very interesting part of town. We're sticking with Testaccio today, but it's important to recognize that these are two adjacent neighborhoods. They're really very easily accessed one to the other. The great coffee in Rome has not died. It's gone takeout. And this is something that our American students have often wished for in previous years. But because we're in a phase of precautions about COVID that doesn't allow the bars to have seating or even to be able to stand at the bar with your cappuccino, all of the bars have finally adopted the takeout cup. And you can see a lot of people walking around with those, which is a part of the culture that never existed before COVID. There was a cherished ritual of standing at the bar, sipping your espresso slowly, chatting with your neighbors and so on, and moving on. And that ritual has now moved outdoors.
So I know like Carlos actually, who's one of our work study, is one of your students, right?
That's right. Carlos is in my class, Neighborhoods of Modern Rome, and he's an architecture student as well.
Carlos, are you enjoying the tour? Yes?
We weren't able to attend one of the classes here because of the restrictions, but fortunately I got to
We're
come
crossing
back
here.
and
Let's watch out for
see with the
traffic.
professor.
That's good. I'm glad you're helping us out and you're enjoying also your professor's tour, which is great.
Yes, it's amazing.
Christopher, what's the demographic of Testaccio? And has it changed since Professor Kranis moved there?
I changed the demographic a little bit, I suppose. As you can imagine, the first housing here, all the buildings surrounding us now, were actually given out preferentially to slaughterhouse workers, which is to say that they were people who were under state contract and what you might call blue-collar workers, laborers. In the 80s, they began to allow those markets, those apartments to be transferred via market forces. So some people who had been here for 3 generations, 4 generations, began to sell. And so inevitably that led to a certain degree of what we call gentrification, meaning wealthier people moving in, some of the original tenants moving out. And so we are going to move down this way. And what I think you'll see by looking at the buildings themselves is that, yes, there has been a slight uptick in the sort of net worth of some of the folks who live here, but the character of the neighborhood, I like to think, has actually remained largely the same. And the buildings that we're passing right now are, as you might have noticed, extremely similar to one another. They are very robustly built, 4- and 5-story structures, all surrounding courtyards. And one of the great things about this neighborhood, what really attracted us here, is the amount of open garden space. So, whereas if you walk around the historic center of Rome, the traditional older part of town, what you see is very tight cobblestone streets, very little open air spaces except for the public piazzas. And what's distinctive about Testaccio is that it was conceived as a place where people could kind of leave the workplace behind. And that means that if they had had a hard day over there in the slaughterhouse, what they wanted to do is come back home and have a kind of inward-looking experience of home. And so, as we'll be seeing in just a moment, they created these buildings to be a perimeter block that surrounds a large common garden. And the gardens are sometimes very nicely maintained by the residents, but the most important thing about them is that the orientation of family life is toward one another. It's toward that interior courtyard space.
Is Testaccio expensive?
Well, it depends what you compare it to. It is a fairly cheap for Rome if you think of the historic center as a basis for that, which means housing prices are lower here than they are in other parts of the city. To be sure, it's more expensive than life in the provinces and probably more expensive than life in many cities in the United States. But I think it offers a great deal. So we find it really affordable for what it is. This is one of our favorite neighborhood bars right here. And we're on a road now called Via Beniamino Franklin, which is named for Benjamin Franklin, the great American founding father. Let's cross over.
Benjamin Franklin, Philly, he's in the house.
That's right. Let's duck in here for a quick sec. And what we're seeing here is a semi-private space, which is really the property of all the people who live in this condominium. And it's a typical example of Testaccio's perimeter block housing. in which all of the apartments largely have very good air currents running from the street side to the interior courtyard side, which means they get great daylight. They also very rarely need air conditioning. And then there's these sort of shaded spaces with fruit trees and herb gardens, which are really the responsibility and the joy of the tenants who live here. And there are about 11 city blocks that are nearly identical to this. So if distinctive housing is what you're looking for, Testaccio doesn't offer an awful lot of that, but it does offer a very good core amenity in the form of these common gardens. We're going to move on a little quickly now so that we can catch the market while there might still be some activity there, and then we'll round out our tour in one or two of the neighborhood's great piazzas. Here we're passing by the backside of the neighborhood parish church, which is known as St. Mary the Liberator, or Santa Maria Liberatrice. And it's a fairly humble church by Roman standards. It was built in 1909 in a kind of Romanesque Gothic style. So you see a lot of brick, there are a lot of rounded arches on the facade. And it's a great example of a kind of humility of architecture that's meant to represent the sort of humble, authentic character of the people who were moving into this district at that same time that the church was completed.
So it's very quiet as a Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
It is always like this in Testaccio.
Well, actually, it is a generally quiet neighborhood, but this is extreme quiet because I think people have tended to stay home. They do less sort of gratuitous going out. Technically, we're not supposed to be gathering in large groups out in the street. And so you do see a much more subdued version of Testaccio today than you would in a typical year.
Got it. I see a lot of flags for the Roma.
Yes. If you're a follower of Italian sport, you should know that this is a predominantly AS Roma supporting neighborhood, which means if you're a fan of one or the other of the hometown teams, I would say there's a stronger presence of the Roma fans than there are of the Lazio fans, although there's a little of everything here, I would say. So just a word about the market, which is actually closed now because at 2 or 3 in the afternoon every day, they shut the doors. But this is one of the great amenities of our neighborhood, and we can just go to the entrance and maybe peer down the corridor and get a sense of it, which is called Mercato Testaccio. And what you see here is a building that was constructed by the city of Rome specifically to support small business operators, and it's broken up into stalls. And many of the people who have stalls in this building, which dates from 2012, had actually occupied the earlier form of the market going back to the 1930s. You can get everything you want here, from eggs, fruit, vegetables, spices, flowers, as you can see. You'll find your favorite butcher in here. And there's a real sense that this is the center of community life in Testaccio. It's also one of the best supplied of these common public markets in the city. So over time, since in the last 10 years, it's really become a destination for people from other parts of Rome, and it has now started to appear in tourist guidebooks. So you don't be surprised to hear about Testaccio Market before you hear about Testaccio as a neighborhood itself. Because they're closed for the afternoon, I'm reluctant to actually move through the market too much, but you get the sense it's a very well-lighted space with a lot of easy circulation. You can come and go as you please. And it has rather small-scale retail. And this is a nice way of supporting your local businesses, is to do your food shopping here at Testaccio Market.
What's your favorite food here, Andrew?
Oh boy. Well, I've got a special stall in the far corner there called Artenio, and he's a baker who has figured out how to make a New York style bagel without even knowing it. He calls it a ciambella, and it's actually just a circular piece of bread which tastes an awful lot like a New York bagel. So we've ordered a whole bunch of them, and we're going to be eating them with our breakfast tomorrow morning.
Oh, that's super nice.
Let's head out to the piazza, because I
Yes,
think it's
let's go.
near time to wrap up, and you've gotten a little flavor of the neighborhood. But what you really have to see before we go is the true social hub of this place.
This looks like Reading Terminal Market in Philly. Wish we could visit. Temple University pre-college programs. Really hope like a lot of, students that are pre-college students that are watching this live, and maybe they decided to go to Philadelphia, of course, to Temple University maybe, and maybe then come to Rome for a semester, an academic year. Or maybe, who knows, to start their academic
If they wish,
career.
Temple Rome is waiting for you. If you enroll in Temple, this is part of what's on offer, and we certainly hope you take advantage of it.
We also want to thank Maureen Sirocco from, of course, the pre-college programs, because she was the one, thanks, Carlos, you're great. I love my assistants right here. Because she was the one organizing everything today about this live streaming event. Maureen Sirocco, Associate Director for Summer and Pre-College Programs at Temple University, Rome. Wow, colorful building here.
Yep, this is a public school, also from the late 19th century when they first built the neighborhood. It really had everything all in one place. So schools, medical facilities, shopping, and so forth. As soon as we get the light, we'll cross. In fact, let's cross this way, and that way we save a little time on the approach. All right.
Hey, Julia, made it. I don't know, Julia, what you were talking about, but I'm glad you made it. You made it to the live streaming event.
As you can see, it's already gelato season here in Rome. The weather's warmed up. The Gelateria are all serving to go because they can't have people hanging out inside the shops. But I think business is good right now.
And I guess, gelato is always to go, right? Most of the time.
Most of the time, although some of the places like you to hang around a little bit.
Do local Testaccians like Pizzeria da Remo? Are they still open?
Yes, they do. Absolutely. Remo is doing a brisk business in takeout. Starting at about 6, they actually fire up their oven a little earlier than they normally would, because they know they're going to get a flood of patrons as the dinner hour approaches. And Remo is one of the great sort of standbys for us personally, but I think in general for the neighborhood.
And what's your best gelateria here in Testaccio?
All right. I will point out one of them, which we've been frequenting quite a lot on the piazza over here. And then I'll name check a couple of others for those who want to come out and see it. One of them is on Via Marmorata, and it's called Panna and Company.
Okay.
An excellent homemade gelateria, which has all different kinds of flavors with their very specially chosen custom ingredients, all made in the back room.
Wow.
And
that
then
sounds delicious.
Another one that's on the block just parallel to us is called Brivido, which I believe has been here for 2 generations already. So it's got history on its side, and it also is one of the great gelateria here, but especially because they dip your cone in a chocolate covering for free with any cone you get.
Okay.
All right, now we have arrived at, I think, what has to be our final destination for today's tour.
Oh, I see
And
a
I'm
lot of
happy
people.
to introduce you to Piazza Testaccio, which was the former home of the covered market, but also has really become the social center of neighborhood life here. The fountain in the center, which you see over there, filled with teenagers and young adults, is actually dedicated to the amphorae, or those ceramic pots that were all shattered to create Monte Testacho. So it's a recognition of the ancient historic significance of the neighborhood as the breadbasket of Rome. The piazza is, as typical Roman piazzas are, paved and not covered with grass. And that means that it is a flexible space that requires very little maintenance. The kids can play soccer on it. My kids learned how to ride their bikes out here. It's a good place for people to, if they're being careful and socially distanced, still come out and take the fresh air, even in a time of pandemic. And it is one of our favorite places to spend time, especially as the weather warms up. You can come for a walk after dinner, see neighbors out in the piazza. All of the fountain sort of exit points there are actually drinkable water, which means kids can stay refreshed out here, splash each other with water balloons and that sort of thing. And one of the great things about it is that this was one of the originally planned parts of the neighborhood, so it has those old growth London plane trees, which provide great shade during the summertime. And what you'll often see here during the day is, especially the older folks who are free during the day, sitting on one bench that's in the shade in the morning, and then as the sun tracks across the piazza, moving bench to bench to bench, speaking to their friends, eventually staying in the shade the whole day and kind of migrating from place to place. And then likewise in wintertime, the sun comes through the bare branches of the trees, which means this is a nice place to come out and take the sun as well. So we have finished our tour, Johnny. I hate to say goodbye.
I know.
It's been nice getting to know all of you.
Just tell me which camera we are on now. Carlos,
I've been talking
is yours?
to Chris, but
no,
you
that's
tell me.
good. But now I think we're gonna go on Carlos.
All right, Carlos.
So I just want to just say thank you, first of all, to our fantastic students over here, Carlos, Liam, and Chris, for being with us. Emily, who is taking care of all the tech situation back at Temple University, Rome. I want to say thank you to Maureen Sirocco, Associate Director of Summer and Pre-College Programs at Temple University. All the people watching this live session connected at high school or high school or not just high school, we're welcome. We're here to wait for you. Like if you want to choose a Temple University, maybe to study abroad at Temple University Rome, or start your academic year with Temple University Rome and do the freshman year here in Rome and then move back to Philadelphia. Andrew, of course, thanks to you for this fantastic live streaming event of Testaccio. It was a great tour. We all enjoyed it. We're going to get a gelato now in one of those places that you said.
All right, where we're going to go from here after we sign off with you is called Capitan Cono. It's behind the big fat tree over there. So when we see you here in Rome, come look for me out in front of Capitan Cono. I'll be out taking the sun, staying in the shade in the sunny days, and enjoying life in Rome.
Great. Emily, you can start with the end credits. Ciao, everybody. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Ciao.
Johnny. Thank you, crew.
Ciao, ciao.
Have a great day, everyone.